Welcome, everyone. Welcome, welcome. We are here to talk about project management today. And let me share my screen. Great. So, project management for nonprofits. Today, we are going to be talking about project management. I wanted to share with you briefly our values. So, Convey works with the intention of fostering positive connections with organizations nationwide, always with the goal to collaborate on projects with the meaning and impact. We do not condone racism, sexism, xenophobia, or any other type of discrimination against marginalized populations of people. Maintaining and upholding this value system is an integral part of the work that we do. Here, you can learn a little bit more about us. We work to empower small and nonprofit organizations. Today, you will get to hear from me. I am the creator of Opportunity with an extensive nonprofit background and experience. Some of the organizations that we've worked with before, in case you're curious, we have had a variety of different projects with them. Let's dive right in. So project management it's simple. It is a very systematic way of approaching projects and tasks to achieve our desired outcomes. We want to be very specific. We want to save time, money, but also with the different types of organizations that we work with. So the way that project management begins is we begin with making a scope of the project. This is going to set up the whole project. And it is the first step because it allows us to set up what the project is going to look like. So some of the questions that we ask are, what is the vision for this project? How do we go about figuring out where we're going with this project? What are the overall goals? And when we are looking at things, how do we keep the mission and vision for the organization in mind? When we're looking at the vision for the project, what is the ultimate goal? What is the whole purpose of the project? For example, when we were preparing for this presentation, I treated it as a mini project. The whole vision for this project was giving everyone an overall view of what project management is. The overall goals for this project was to get everyone caught up as to how to approach project management and how we can go about informing our community about project management approaches. That is how we approach project management in general. We always want to start with the overview because we want to know what is the purpose of this specific project. That's how we start. When we start, we begin by setting SMART goals. So let's talk about SMART goals. SMART goals are specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. When we are setting up goals, it is important that we are very, very intentional as to how we approach them. Setting up goals that are not specific is simply just a wish. When we are looking at this, we want to be specific. To be able to be specific, what's going to be accomplished? What do we want to get out of this? What steps do we have to take? What methods are we looking at? We want it to be measurable. We want to be able to measure success. What data are we going to collect? Is there data? How and what methods will we be using? Where is this data going to live? We also want to be cognizant of, is it achievable? We want to set goals that are attainable because otherwise the project will not be a success. When we are looking at things, they are achievable. Do we have the needed skills for the team to be able to do this? Do we have the needed tools to be able to do this? It's not just about achievable skills, but also tools. Do we need any tools to be able to achieve this goal? And the number is for relevant. How does this goal overall attached to the greater scope? Does it align with the vision for the organization? Does it align with the overall aspects of the project? And we also want this to be time bound. We want it to be specific as to when it will be achieved, because it's not simply, I want to achieve XYZ goals. It's, I want to achieve XYZ goals by Q1 of next quarter. So it is time bound. So we have our goals. We have our overview. Now we are going to identify who our stakeholders are. So how do we define stakeholders? Stakeholders are who is involved in the project, who is going to be giving us feedback on this project, as well as who benefits from this project. So it's not simply who is involved, but who do we have to get feedback from? Are there any potential barriers? Is there any conversations that we must have to be able to make this project achievable? Who are our ultimate decision makers for this project? And the most important one is, how do we identify stakeholders? So identifying stakeholders is a very simple approach. We have to talk about MoCA. So when we are looking at projects or tasks, we always want to go back to MoCA. We don't always use all of them, but I always like to look at the manager and the owner. Who owns the whole process? So for example, when we are working on different projects, we are not always the ultimate owner of the project. Sometimes it's the executive director, sometimes it's a program manager, sometimes it's a finance director, depending on what we're working on. So when we are defining stakeholders, who are the people that are touched by this project? Then we look at the structure, which is continuing to help us build out our whole project. So when we are looking at the structure, it is also known as WBS. And this is a table that details it's WBS work breakdown structure, by the way. It's going to detail the steps that need to be taken to be able to accomplish the whole project. It's going to help you set up a roadmap. It's going to help you move through different phases of the project. When we are looking at the breakdown, it's going to help you visualize the project as a whole. Is there steps? Is there particular milestones that we are using? Is it a short project? Is it a long project? Is there different stakeholders at different stages? The work breakdown structure helps you visualize everything that's happening with the project. There are many, many templates for work breakdown structure. It all depends on what works for your methodologies. And we're going to cover a couple of tools a little later on. I mentioned milestones. When we're looking at milestones and timelines, we are setting up a project, but how do we identify timelines? And why are timelines important? So we identify timelines by knowing when our project is due, knowing what the stepping stones are, and we want to identify when the deliverables must be met. These are important because we want to go back to our SMART goals. They are time. It's the last letter. Oh, it is time. But we want to know when our project is going to be done and if it's on course to be completed. This is going to allow us to know if things are off the rails, if things have to be course corrected. It's also going to allow us to be able to communicate with our stakeholders if things are going according to plan. Sometimes we must adjust. It happens all the time. This is not a failure of planning. This is not a failure of preparation. It is not a failure of the project as a whole. Adjustments happen. By knowing our milestones, it's allowing us to be nimble and be able to adjust. Cost and budget is also another aspect that we must look at. Sometimes projects are free, sometimes they are not. We want to take into account what is the overall cost of accomplishing these projects and why it's important. We always want to know, especially in the nonprofit world, what the overall cost is, because we are looking at things in a manner that is working towards capacity building. Most nonprofits don't have unlimited budgets, and we want to be able to determine if projects are working according to plan. We want to be able to stay within our budgets because we have to report. Nonprofits, small businesses, we always have to report as to what we're doing, not only to our funders, but to our team. Where's our money going? Determining the budget is imperative because it's not just cost per tools or cost per training, but also it is the time that you or your team are spending on it. These are expenses and they are a little bit more difficult to nail down because we have to have a lot more information, but it allows us to know how they balance with the overall cost and budget, the scope, and the ultimate goals for the project as a whole. It also allows us to be able to have a base for the future. If we are able to successfully conduct a project under budget, under time, it's going to allow you a lot of future flexibility for future projects and endeavors. It's also going to allow you to overcome any expenses that come up. Communications. We must have a communications plan. When we are looking at projects, we are always looking at what is the overall scope, how are we going to go about it, and how do we approach this work. It is important because it allows us to talk very efficiently about our projects. It is going to allow us to communicate to the world, to each other, and find ways to very, very effectively talk about the project that we have going on. It's also going to give us talking points about any potential changes that come up and a way to regularly communicate with all the stakeholders that we've already identified. So when we have a communications plan, such as we're going to have milestone meetings. These meetings are going to be 30 minutes long. They're going to be every other week. And on this meeting, we're going to talk about any roadblocks that have come up. We're going to talk about progress, and we're going to be talking about overall status. Fantastic. Everyone knows that's coming up. It's on everybody's calendars. And there is a clarity that comes with that. You're not going to get random emails saying, hey, what's the status? People are going to know where to get that information. One of the things that we don't talk about often enough with projects is risk management. We are often caught off guard, and we want to have a way to deal with risk management and problems that might come up, because problems will come up. If we are able to plan ahead for our risk in the planning stages, we are able to be prepared for any problems that might come up. If we have a way of dealing with problems before they come up, when the problems happen, when those speed bumps happen, we are going to be responding with a prior arranged plan instead of going back to the beginning and having to tackle whatever problem comes up. You've often heard the phrase, we're building this plane as we fly it. When it comes to project management, we discourage that. If we are able to plan ahead, if we know that problems in general will come up, we have a process to address those, such as we have a project and it ran out of money. It's a problem, but we planned ahead. So we know that if a problem comes up, we are going to contact our stakeholders for an emergency status meeting. This emergency status meeting is going to tell everyone that we have run out of money for some reason. I don't know what happened, but it's a problem. And make a plan accordingly. The example doesn't matter. The example is a random problem came up, but we had the steps in place to tackle this problem. The steps were, we're going to call a status meeting with our stakeholders, and we are going to come up with action items. Risk management doesn't have to be complex. It can be as simple as we're going to call a meeting and come up with a solution to said problem in that meeting. But it's simply saying, these are the people that have to be in that meeting. This is who's going to be running the meeting, and that's how we're going to get this solved. So we've spoken about how problems come up, budgets, status, and now we're going to talk about tracking progress, which makes it measurable. When we don't track progress for our projects, we don't know where they're at. We don't know if they are on track. We don't know if they are off the rails. We don't know who's working on it. There is a lot of uncertainty happening if we do not track progress. The other thing is, it adds a lot of anxiety because we don't keep all this information in our brain at all times. And you do not have to if we have a way of tracking the progress. We have a spreadsheet or a document or a project management tool, and that is where we're tracking the progress with notes. Or we have this series of videos we have been recording as the project goes on. Doesn't matter what we're using, it all depends on the project. But it allows us to always be able to go back and evaluate the project as we go. What is working? What is not working? It allows us to visualize the entire project to be able to see, okay, this step worked amazingly. These are the things that we did accordingly. And it allows us to be able to replicate that. So it allows us room for flexibility and improvements. Now we're conducting the project. When we are conducting the project, planning does not stop. We continuously can keep working on project management, on scoping out projects. The reason is projects are very, very quickly evolving into very complex things. And sometimes they get away with it from us. And then we have scope creep. So the reason why we continue to plan and keep track and check in is to keep it contained as to the ultimate goals that we had at the very beginning. We want to be able to go back and say, these are the goals that we set out. We have met them. We have been on budget. We have kept track. We are doing the project as it was meant to be. And it allows us to know all of the steps, which then leads us to be able to evaluate our project. When we are planning, we always want to know, what does success in this project looks like? We want to know what the ultimate goals are and how will we know when we are done. In the nonprofit space, it always feels like we are continuously in the same project. But if we break it down to more digestible projects, you are going to feel more successful. If we are able to break it down and organize it in a way that is more tangible for the team, everyone is going to know what's working, what's not working. Are we on budget overall? How are we providing feedback to each other? Are we actually sitting down, taking a look back at what we've done and explored how we are able to grow from here? It also sets you up for future success when you are able to replicate the projects that have been successful. I mentioned before that you are able to use tools for not only planning, tracking, and keeping all this information. So I'm going to quickly go over some of the tools. There are so many tools available. These are some of our favorite ones. And there are more. There are many free ones. So some of our favorite ones are Asana, Trello, Monday, a Gantt chart, Airtable, and weekly planners. You just have to identify which one works for you. Asana is my favorite because it has a lot of flexibility for how you look at projects. So it has colors, it has unicorns, which makes a really big difference. And it enables you to very quickly communicate the status of projects. Then we have Trello. Trello is completely card-based. Trello allows you to have cards and columns, and it is all very, very integrated with your team. You can have very customizable ways of looking at these cards. A Gantt chart, this is a very fancy spreadsheet, but it allows you to track the timelines and the tasks that you're working on and be able to scope everything out for the entire project. Airtable is another very fancy spreadsheet. In Airtable, you are able to set up different ways of looking at projects. You're able to do cards, you're able to do boards, you're able to do just spreadsheets with different tags, and it's all able to be connected. And then we also have just a weekly planner. This is going to be the most straightforward and basic that you might be able to approach. It's very task oriented and very regimented as to the schedule. All of these things that I have shared are free. They are online, you can sign up for them, but they are all free. And also, there are more. So I have covered a lot of information today. And I also wanted to close off by talking about if you need project management services, our team is certified in project management, and we are able to provide those services overall. Also, if you have any questions, I'm going to put my info in the chat. And I also know we have had a couple of questions that came in. So I am going to stop sharing and stop the recording so we can address some of those questions. So I'm going to stop that now and I'm going to stop recording.